Ave Maria, gratia plena Dominus tecum, benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus.
Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen.
Unplug from the machine, tune into God's reality. Welcome to the Ave Maria farm.
That is right. We're coming to you from an undisclosed location in northern Texas, and I think it's a beautiful day out. I know a lot of people wouldn't agree with that, but I really like this weather.
It's chilly.
It's very chilly.
Beautiful.
So what are we doing? What are we doing sitting out here in the cold on your farm? What is the Ave Maria farm?
Well, we started this Ave Maria farm a couple years ago because we felt like so much in this culture was just going crazy, and it was time to step back and tap into something that we've lost. And so it's started developing into a real sanctuary. We dedicated this to the Mother of God, and everyone who lives here feels like her presence is here. You know, there's a peace, and you know we've started. You came to me a couple years ago, or just a year?
Probably about a year by now. Yeah.
And
whenever I start asking about orthodoxy, I think a lot of people that come to this channel are going to be. I think you're going to have some Orthodox. I think you're going to have some probably trad Catholics, and then people like myself really interested in the ancient faith, in Orthodoxy, and I think it's going to be a fun time. So I'm excited for this, and I think that a lot of people within this sphere too, they have such an interest in sort of questioning where we're at. And I think that even a lot of people that aren't necessarily of faith or of faith yet are going to find this sort of effort here really interesting because we're serious about pursuing Christ, of course, and but you have a very unique way of doing that here with the homestead.
Well, there's so many questions nowadays. My favorite part of being a priest, second to saying Mass at the altar, is getting to know people, spending time at coffee shops or just running into someone at the store and talking. And somehow, because I'm a priest, because I wear a cassock and stand out, especially in a little Texan town, people start just talking. And it's amazing, everyone's on a different journey, right? Everyone's coming from a different place, and we've all grown up in a very secular world. But what does it mean that's changing constantly? And everyone's trying to find truth and sanity, right? Or something with meaning, something to worship, essentially. And yet, I'm convinced one of the main problems that we have is we're too cut off from reality. And that's what we're trying to get at here, a way that we can just step away from the smart world, right? From the smart cities, the smart devices, and it's such an ironic term, right? But the new world order, really, to step away and to start living a little bit more the way our family and ancestors have lived for hundreds of years, to be able to work with animals, to look at the stars, to sit out and enjoy some tea, even if it's a cold and damp day, but just be still and listen. So that's what I think we're digging into at the Ave Maria farm. That's unique and so valuable.
I appreciate that, and yeah, you make a really good point on the irony of these so-called smart devices, and of course, we're using one right now to record this podcast. So there are wholesome ways that we can engage with the machine. Well, you understand what I'm saying? Yeah, we hope. Right. We hope. But it's interesting because with the smart devices. The irony is that you end up losing your ability to focus on things or to recall information. We're so dependent upon going to Google to search for this or that, or even something more simple like looking for a good restaurant to go to. You're gonna get something that's just gonna pop up. It's the nearest thing. You're not having to engage anymore to talk about, hey, where's the good place in town, to go and eat, and then that person talks to you and you learn something about them. Like all of that nuance of how human beings have lived for so long is fading away.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that we're seeking to kind of recapture. I think the beauty of something like this is that, yeah, we can use this technology to hopefully talk about some of these things, and maybe somebody in a dark spot in their life who, they're spending time scrolling through YouTube and everything, they see something like this that can actually influence them to get off of YouTube. That's kind of what we're hoping to do, I think, with this. Yeah. But it's a very, very fun thing.
Well, the answer isn't just stop using this technology or unplug from this. If nothing else, the answer is to unplug from the addiction, from the world, to step back and to be able to reevaluate, right? To turn off your phone for a little bit and to breathe and to just listen. And so our real problem is we get sucked into this world, into the pace, into the expectations, into the worldview, and our perception of reality is totally distorted. Just yesterday, I watched What is a Woman? By Walsh, and if you haven't seen it, it's incredible. It's on Daily Wire.
Oh, Matt Walsh. Okay.
Yeah, Matt Walsh. He goes all around the world asking people, "What is a woman?" And the answers that people give in America are totally bizarre. The extent to which we are cut off from reality is just mind-boggling. And my favorite part was when he went to interview some people, indigenous people in Africa, and asked them what a woman was. And it was just, they were laughing. They were having such a good time, but they were so wholesome. They didn't have the kind of mental and psychological and spiritual blocks that we do in our culture today. All of us do, that I do. We're all part of something that we have to be able to step out of somehow.
Yeah, and it's interesting because whenever you do take like some effort to step outside of all of that, naturally you become more self-aware of the ways in which you yourself have been, corrupted by the world. And I think that's one of the things that's such a draw for me in Orthodoxy is the prayer and the fasting rules and all of those things that are really geared toward the sanctifying and the theosis, the thing that makes us more like God. And it's interesting because one podcaster that I love, David Patrick Harry, he's an Orthodox podcaster. I've had the pleasure of talking to him actually before in a one-on-one session. And he talks about how, in a sense, technology is almost acting as and don't take this to him going to a crazy extreme, but in a sense, it's almost like Satan uses these things in order to kind of like incarnate in people's daily lives. It's almost like a reverse incarnation where you're getting the TikTok with all of the really lewd things that you get, and it's infecting our minds, and it's all kind of like drawing us into this dark body in a sense where you get this gross groupthink and all this kind of stuff. And that's just so fascinating to me because we really have to take a step back and understand that there is a war going on that is unseen, and that everything that we see going on in the world, not to say that like the material world is bad or anything like this, but we're not to love the things of the world, and to know that when you see evil going on, there is a demonic underpinning to it. Those things stem from the devil, and you can go to crazy extremes with that, but nonetheless, it's something that we have to constantly be aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love your word, or your phrase, reverse incarnationism, right? That's completely what's happening. We think technology is neutral, but it's not. Everything we do affects us. Every device we use is part of our daily liturgy. It forms who we are. It changes the way we think, right? You do see something diabolical happening. And, I used to consider myself a Luddite in the closet, and now I've come out, unapologetically, and in my Ludditism. The fact that we are uneasy about these topics is really concerning, and again, this issue of what is a woman, these responses were just demonic. It was heartbreaking, and you can see it in people's faces. It's almost like a possession that's happening, and we have these tools now that embody and transmit these demonic messages. They're everywhere. And we've all kind of laughed at anyone who, talked too much about being worldly, something a church doesn't talk about anymore, right? That's like Grandma talked about that. But what have we gotten ourselves into? And our technology, again, the church is not against technology, but we have to be so wary of everything in our life and the way it affects us, right? Is it conducive to meditation? Is it conducive to stillness? Is it conducive to very wicked messages being pumped into our psyche and our children's psyche? Do we have the control that we think we have? Someone said to me, I was visiting with a priest and we were talking about iPhones, and he said, well, I suppose it just comes down to having self-control. Well, can you say that about crack? Oh, crack's okay if you have enough self-control. No one can control, no one can handle crack, right?
Yeah.
No one has enough self-control to use it in a healthy way. And we have to start asking questions about these technologies and our lifestyle. Do we really have control? Can I genuinely thrive as a Christian when I'm watching all this entertainment, when I'm streaming through all these videos, when I'm surfing the web? I'm not so sure that we can handle this anymore. And I used to be embarrassed to say it, but we're getting to a crisis as a culture, and something's wrong, and we have to find a way out.
Yeah. So all of this stuff that you're saying, it's so refreshing to hear that, and I think a lot of the listeners are going to be very refreshed by it as well. For you, how did this journey into looking deeper into this concept of, even like a new world order, or the fact that there's something a little bit deeper going on, and looking at how the technology has such a negative effect when so many people just live their lives as if, it's the air that they breathe. Like, what kind of led your thought process through there? I'm gonna guess that it takes a Christian worldview to really, grasp this, because of course, as a materialist, it's just all, a bunch of random stuff going on. So just let us know a little bit about how that went for you.
I think it's not enough just to be a Christian and just to read and study and pray. We really do need a Christian environment that's conducive to nurturing a sense of holiness. And that can manifest in a lot of ways. But personally, I have to give credit to the time I spent at monasteries. I think that was the most important part of this. And that's what really inspired the Ave Maria farm. When I was in college, I discovered a little monastery in New Mexico that's absolutely beautiful. Right? It was just deep in the hillside of the country, along a little stream. You had to drive through the stream to get up into the monastery. It always felt like you were getting baptized, right? And all the monks had separate cells without electricity or plumbing, just cells that they built scattered around the woods. And when I was a 17-year-old at college, I would go there almost every weekend and just be in quiet, a place of holiness and quiet. And then from there, I moved to a monastery in Greece, on Mount Olympus, where I was a member of prologimos in Greek, like a pre-novice, for about a year and a half. And again, living there, it's not that we're all supposed to live in monasteries, but having time to experience a very different lifestyle, to see that there could be people without the newest gadgets, without running around chasing after this or that were, without even questioning, the most free and happy people I've ever known. And in Greece, it's a third the size of California, with over 1,000 active monasteries. So this is just part of life. And so life, and the society in Greece is gone trela, as they say in Greek. It's gone crazy. But in the monasteries, there's a sameness, a brightness that's just profound. And anywhere. And so monasticism has always been the heart of Christianity. And I think that is the greatest tragedy that happened in the Protestantism. Because when they got rid of monasticism, they got rid of St. Paul's. They got rid of John the Baptist. People that had given up everything to unplug, right? To just eat a little bread and drink some water and just be quiet and to pray. And we need that in America. And if we don't have monasticism, we need to make sanctuaries, right? So it's fundamental. And I think that's a missing ingredient in a lot of Christian lifestyle. That idea of monasticism or hermits or like holy ascetics, they just kind of either live in the mountains and trees or they live under the bridges in a city, right? When we lose that, we lose a very direct experience of God in his saints. And we're disconnected from something. So I think that personally, my time at the monasteries kind of helped reboot the system, kind of helped me just completely get away from everything and see something different. And now as a married priest, with a bunch of kids and responsibilities in town, it gives a little bit of a vision. Not that we are to live like monks, but there's something in that we all need.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And the purpose, of course, of you're talking about creating those sanctuaries. This is such a beautiful place to do that. And I also think from the perspective of someone who's interested in, affecting change in the world to the extent that, like, God, empowers us to do that. Like, I have a kind of optimism. We understand that everything in the end, it's going to burn, it's going to be gone, but at the same time, we do have this hope of winning souls for Christ, of creating, this kind of environment where we can do the best we can with what we have and just let God take care of the rest. And really, he's, holding all of it together anyways. But when you're talking about sort of emulating that within the modern world, it calls to mind the story of Saint Basil the Fool, who is just one of my absolute favorites. And of course, he lived basically as a homeless, pauper, pretty much. And I think too, whenever Ivan the Terrible rolls into town, and even though he's this little skinny homeless man, he's actually able to reprimand Ivan the Terrible and convict him such that he ceased, what he was doing in terms of murdering tons of people, at least in that particular area, if I'm remembering correctly. And people, just marveled at that whole encounter. And I think a lot of what can be gleaned from that is that we look at what we're up against in the world in terms of dark forces, in terms of hard and soft power in governments and in media and etc. But I think that the answer to the overcoming is really found in that quiet place, to where if being like Saint Basil, we can totally give ourselves wholly to God, and not worry about holding on to every last little bit of what we have up until it's all stripped away from us. If we can just yield those things over to him, that's really where we start to see God just do miraculous things really in our lives, and even in a culture too. And of course that starts with believers. It starts with ourselves sort of positioning ourselves in that way and being that beacon of hope for non-believers to see. And that's what we hope for, because it's a dark world out there. Think of what's going on with how our children are being affected by this, and it's very grievous, but it's always nice to know that this kind of stuff exists.
No, I think there's a lot of people, a lot of God's men and women who are striving for that. And you nailed it. I love the reference to St. Basil. We all have to become ascetics. And I'm such a hypocrite for saying that, because I'm pathetic. But it's become more and more pressing on my heart. Things that, this gets us back to technology, right? Things that we've justified in our culture, the extent of worldliness in our culture, the extent of entertainment and amusement, the extent of lustful glances, right? These movies that we've watched, whether they're just PG-13 films, or, things that we've all justified because we compare ourselves to other people around us. Oh, I'm better than that guy, right? It's killing us. There's something deeply damaging in all of it. And no civilization has ever been so fun obsessed, so entertainment obsessed, so fat and lazy as our culture.
Yeah.
And I'm part of that. And
Here.
and so as Christians, you're right. We have to reclaim that. You know, all the tools are laid out in the church, right? And the church fathers and the teachings. And even, you know, I've been Orthodox for several years, right? Since I was 17. It was almost 20 years ago. And yet,
20 years ago.
yeah, I know, right? Yeah. And I'm just now starting to come to terms with some of these things by the Desert Fathers, by the saints, that I've just kind of, you know, you have different stages, but things that maybe I never really wanted to look at, because I wanted to justify behaviors. I excused myself as saying, oh, we all need to veg, we all need to relax. But no, we really do need to become like St. Basil's. We really do need to find a way to embrace poverty, to embrace stillness. I mean, even if it comes down to, some of the things that we love. I used to love watching Star Trek while washing the dishes. I'm the dishwasher in my home, right? You know, my wife, she does all the business administration. You know, she's incredible, and I'm really good at washing dishes. I love it. And I used to just watch all these shows, and that bothered my conscience for years. And I started praying every single day. I started praying for unceasing prayer, which is, you know, so monumental and far away. But I feel like, you know, it's what we're here for, so we might as well pray for it every day, right? And I started praying that God would free me from addiction to TV. And that was what I watched, you know. And I used to suggest an illustration. And after a while, little by little, I started realizing, okay, you know, everyone's in a different place. We can't judge other people. But in myself, as much as I wanted to veg at the end of the day and watch some stupid show, it was killing my soul. I'm so starved for leisure, for quiet, for just silence. My home was starved. I started realizing I need my children to grow up watching their dad wash the dishes in silence. Sometimes I pray. Sometimes I listen to classical music. And sometimes I'm just quiet. And, you know, for most of human history, that's how people spent their life. They were just silent. They sat down, they ate food. I mean, there wasn't music blasting. It was just silent. And I started realizing my soul is mushy. And this isn't about, like, depravity. It's about just getting a little bit more radical and cutting off and trying to become a little bit more impoverished so that we can cherish God in the present moment. But everything in our world is trying to keep us from that, right? Mm-hmm. Everything is blocking that.
And it's a very unique time in human history that we have all of these kinds of things. So I think that's one thing that's very difficult for some of these younger generations growing up, is that they just take for granted that there were always iPads. There were, you know, they didn't grow up with this sound
I
going
forgot
on.
to feed my cattle just now, so that's why they're not happy.
Yeah, protesting.
Yeah.
Everyone's protesting. Everyone's got a grievance of some sort, too.
This is the good kind of protest.
Yeah, it
Simple.
is. Yes.
You know?
Yes. Exactly. Yeah, well. So what kind of practical wisdom would you offer for someone who maybe they don't have a homestead or homestead yet, or but they're starting to feel this sense of, man, I'm hearing what y'all are saying, and I feel it too, and I want that unceasing prayer. I just want to, be able to give up something very simple. What kind of practical wisdom would you give for just the average person who's looking to pursue this?
You know, the first thing that comes to mind, read The New Media Epidemic by Jean-Claude Larcher. Read it. And setting that aside, I think John Sr. ultimately had the best advice by saying, you won't even begin this journey until you smash your television.
There you go.
That's it. Start with that. Get rid of your television. Spend time eating your food at a dining table. And strive to talk to God constantly. If we could figure that out, we'd be in the right direction.
Yeah. It's beautiful, the simplicity that the Lord has laid out for us, and yet it's such a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Such a struggle for us just within ourselves. But I agree with that. And even, when you mention, I love that, just, strive to eat at a dining table. So many people don't do that. Or I'll find myself, if I'm washing dishes or doing some kind of, sort of menial task, it's almost like I have to have something playing in the background, a podcast or something. That's the big thing nowadays. I like Star Trek too, back in the day. Or, I'll be eating a meal and I'll have to load up some YouTube video or something, and I'll catch myself sometimes because I'll have that little thought in my head of, maybe I should just forego the television or the YouTube or whatever. And you get to that place where it's almost like you sort of just start to willingly just let it slip away, but you convince yourself that it's not, a willing thing, and it's such an evil thing, such a difficult thing to strive against. But I think that sometimes that first step, as you're saying, is just kind of getting rid of something, get rid of the temptation. Mm-hmm. We're told to flee from temptation, and that's we need to do a lot more fleeing.
That's right. And temptation, spirituality is not spiritual. It's everything. Mm-hmm. Temptations aren't just some kind of, they're not in this vacuous, spirit realm with clouds and, it's everything. It's your technology. It's how you wash your dishes. It's how you eat. And I do not know the answer. And there's so many parts of my life that are not healthy. And that's why we're doing this talk. Mm-hmm. And our purpose here at the Ave Maria Farm and on our blog is to discuss these issues, to try to wrestle with these, try to figure out how can we live focused lives around an altar with God on it, right? And that's what the dining table is. And that's what the kitchen is, and we're cooking, and this focal point that's makes us healthy. That's what we need to figure out. And it's it's a challenge, but it should also be fun.
It should.
I think it's like my wife and I, we love this stuff and just constantly looking at it, and I think that's also the key to living a healthy life, is to have fun pursuing focus.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah, delight yourself in the Lord. I mean, there's plenty of things that we can have some semblance of delight for, but why not be excited about the notion of pursuing a new life? Just cutting out all those distractions and going towards God. I think if you can get to that place where that's an excitement to you, like you're getting into a good spot.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to do, and that's why I'm so appreciative that you would extend the offer to have conversations with me and invite me out here and all of that. It's really such a huge blessing, and I know it's going to be a blessing to the viewers as well. Did you want to keep going, or did you?
No, I think we're at a good point.
I think we're at a good
I'm excited,
point.
and I'm really looking forward to hearing from you all. If you have any thoughts, reach out, ask questions. It would be really fun to hear your questions and to discuss them. Not that we have the answer, but we can kind of dig at it together. And I'm really excited, Johnathan, to have you with us, and to get to share this journey and pursuing wholesome, holy life in Christ.
Amen. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching today. God bless you, and we will see you next time.
God bless you.
Sancta